$38,214. For a long time, that number, it felt like it was my whole financial identity. That was the grand total staring back at me from 5 different credit card statements on a random Tuesday night.
And in that moment, just feeling completely overwhelmed and, honestly, a little terrified, I actually said that out loud to my empty kitchen. It felt like the right move, Like this big, powerful decision to finally take back control.
I really, truly believed that getting rid of my cards was the magic bullet. But it wasn't. In fact, it just created a whole new kind of problem. So in this explainer, I'm going to walk you through my story, the mistake, the hard lesson, and the comeback, so you don't have to learn it the same way I did.
All right, so let's get into it. To really understand why I did something so drastic, you gotta understand how I even got there in the first place, because on the surface, everything looked just fine.
And it's true. On paper, I looked good. I had a stable tech job, a decent income, and I never, ever missed a minimum payment. I figured I had a handle on it. But what was happening, really slowly, was lifestyle inflation. A weekend trip here, a new gadget there, more dinners out. Each one felt small, but man, were they adding up.
And this is what it looked like when I finally forced myself to actually add it all up. Card 1, $9,600. Card 2, $7,400. Card 3, $6,900. It just kept going. Seeing it all laid out in black and white like that, that's when the panic really set in.
My logic at the time was super simple. If the cards don't exist, I can't spend any more money. Problem solved, right? It was a total emotional reaction to a math problem, and that is a really dangerous mix. I thought I was being disciplined, but what I was really being was scared.
So within a couple of weeks, I'd paid off 2 of the smaller cards, and I was on the phone with the banks closing those accounts, and I felt this huge wave of relief. But that feeling, it didn't last very long. I'd missed a few critical pieces of the puzzle.
I honestly expected it to be about the same, maybe even a little better. I was paying off debt, right? That's not what happened.
My score dropped from a really solid 760 all the way down to 698. Almost 60 points just vanished. My stomach just hit the floor. I felt completely defeated. This was the question that was just spinning in my head. I was paying off what I owed, I was trying to be responsible, so why was I getting punished for it? It turns out I just didn't understand how the whole system actually works. And this is when I finally started doing the homework I should have done from the very beginning. Here in the US, your credit score isn't just about whether you pay on time. It is so much more nuanced than that.
So your FICO score is calculated using 5 main factors. Payment history, that's the big one, 35%. But right behind it is credit utilization, which is a massive 30%. Then you have length of credit history at 15%, and credit mix and new credit are both 10% each. Without even realizing it, my emotional decision had damaged the 2 most important factors after payment history.
Let's really focus on that second biggest factor, credit utilization.
It's a pretty simple concept. It's just the percentage of your available credit that you're using. Lenders want to see this number as low as possible, ideally under 30%. Okay, this is where it all clicks into place. This is my exact mistake. So before I closed the cards, let's say I had a balance of about $30,000 and my total credit limit was $80,000. That gave me a 37% utilization. Not great, but not a total disaster. But when I closed those 2 cards, my balance was still $30,000, but my total credit limit dropped to $55,000. And just like that, my utilization ratio spiked to 54%. To the credit bureaus, nothing had changed about my debt, but my ratio had. It made me look like a much, much riskier borrower overnight. And that wasn't the only mistake. One of the cards I closed was the very first one I ever got, way back when I was 23 years old. By closing it, I basically chopped years off my average credit age. This dinged that length of credit history factor, which, remember, is 15% of the score. Lenders like to see a long, stable history, and I just erased a big chunk of mine. So after my score tanked, I finally swallowed my pride and went to talk to a financial advisor. I told him my logic, that I closed the cards so I wouldn't be tempted. And what he said, it really hit me hard. He said, that's a behavior fix, not a credit strategy. And he was absolutely right. I had treated the symptom, which was my spending, without ever understanding the actual system.
That conversation, that was the real turning point. It was time to stop reacting out of fear and start acting with an actual plan. And look, it took time, it took a lot of discipline, but over the next 1.5 years, I completely turned it all around.
So here's what the new strategy looked like. First, I kept all my remaining cards open to protect my credit history and that utilization ratio. Then I used the avalanche method, tackling the card with the highest interest rate first with everything I had. I cut my spending way back, picked up some freelance work for extra cash, and I automated every single payment so I would never even risk being late.
It wasn't flashy or exciting. To be honest, most of it was just boring. It was 18 months of sticking to a budget, saying no to things, and just staying focused. But at the end of that journey, I hit zero. Every last dollar of that debt was gone.
And my credit score, it didn't just bounce back. It actually climbed higher than it had ever been. I had rebuilt it, but this time I actually understood the foundation it was built on. If there is one single lesson to take away from this entire mess, it's this. In your financial life, a good strategy will always beat raw emotion. My fear-based decision cost me points on my credit score and a ton of stress. My calm, calculated plan, that's what built real stability.
So here's what you really need to get. Credit cards aren't the enemy. They're just tools, and you can use them well or you can use them poorly. Your credit score, that's real leverage. It's power that can save you thousands on a mortgage or a car loan. So before you ever think about closing a card because you're stressed, just pause. Run the numbers on your utilization. Think about the age of your accounts. Make the choice from a place of strength, not panic.
And this really shows the difference perfectly. Emotional decisions, like me closing my cards, they feel really powerful in the moment. They give you this rush of temporary relief. But smart financial decisions, the budgeting, the strategic payments, just being patient, they often feel kind of boring. But they are the only things that build real long-term financial health.
So that's my story, from debt and confusion to clarity and control. And it leaves one final question, not just for me, but for you. When it comes to your money, which path are you choosing? The one that feels good for a moment, or the one that actually builds a solid future?